Okay, so people who have just jumped into the session, we'll get going in about a minute formally. So just I'm presuming you have your coffee ready or your tea, whichever sort. Someone said royal tea. That's a different sort of tea, but all that happens in about a minute or so. Thank you. Okay, I take it we're good to go, right? Yeah, absolutely. So let's get moving then. A warm welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Ashraf Garda. Welcome to the Solidarity Fund Media and Stakeholder Briefing. It's a quarterly briefing, so just about every 3 months or so. This is what we've had, where it's an important feedback communication pipeline to the media and by extension to the people of our country. And I think since the formation of the Solidarity Fund, that has been a very important means of communication, and it certainly ensured that the public through the media knows exactly what has been happening with the Solidarity Fund. So there's no question of like, we didn't know. You certainly do. So appreciate that. In terms of a warm welcome, let me specifically call out the chairperson of the board of the Solidarity Fund, Gloria Sarobe. Thank you, and great that you joined us, together with Thandi Nzimande, the CEO of the Solidarity Fund, and then Zanele Nwepe, the CFO of the Solidarity Fund, and then, of course, many other board members and members of the team that makes up the Solidarity Fund. I also know that there are members of the public who are able to connect to us live on streaming live, and perhaps some channels, television channels may well be taking us as well. So if that's the case, a warm welcome to each and every one of you, but also directly a warm welcome to members of the media. And again, myself being a part of it, notwithstanding that, the important role that the media plays in communicating, and therefore not just relaying the information, but asking the type of questions clearly that the public needs to know. And of course, you do that, and you do that well. So we welcome that. The plan in terms of the program is pretty tight. So I'm going to talk very little. We'll have 3 speakers. The names I've mentioned, I'll introduce them again just now. And then there's about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A for members of the media. And that will be via questions through to the chat line. Short, sharp, punchy. The more questions we get, the absolute better. So I think anyway, but the plan is to stop at 12 o'clock. I also understand that many people will be battling with load shedding. That's the nature of the beast. So understandably so, once you get on, if you're not speaking later on, you can certainly move to dropping your picture. That's not just the members of the Solidarity Fund, but also members of the media and others in this space, so that at least we protect the all important bandwidth for each and every one of us, right? And then later on, I know that members of the media have put forward requests to do one-on-ones with selected members of the Solidarity Fund. If you have, that's great. Franco will liaise with you. If you haven't, well, you can still speak to Franco, who will do just that as well. Okay, that's the story. Now, you know that since COVID struck, 2.5 years ago, maybe, the Solidarity Fund has been an important role player in providing relief and managing all important monies and programs on behalf, really, of the public to try and give them the necessary support. We had a stage, and you may have heard about this before, about a scaling down that may come up soon. We'll hear about that later, but there's also 2 important checklists. One is the financials, where they are, what are the monies that are coming, where are they going to? That's the first part. And the second part, an overview of the programs and activities of the last few months once again. So with that in mind, let me then say first up, I'll bring in the chairperson of the Solidarity Fund, Gloria Sarobe, who will talk about all those things, a general perspective, and talking about what happens next. Gloria, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Very good morning, everyone. I see my deputy chairman is here as well, Eddie Eindhoven. Good morning. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this media briefing and presentation of our integrated annual report, annual financials and update of our activities, as well as our scaling down preparations. My colleague, the Fund CEO, Thandi Nzimande, will update you on the Fund's activities. She will be followed by the Fund's Chief Financial Officer, Zanele Nwepe, who will take you through a detailed presentation of our second set of audited annual financial statements. We do this deliberately because we have promised transparency. We have promised frequent updates to the public because we are managing the public monies. I will briefly preempt Tandi's presentation now by first thanking PwC. I see Raj is here, our external auditors, for their diligence and the thoroughness of their audit. Our first audit also brought many lessons for us. While it showed that our due diligence and governance processes were robust, both the fund and our audit partner learned that the unique nature of the fund brought unique questions that we have learned to better anticipate and address. And for that, we thank them. The fund is unique in how it brings government, business, and civil society together. There's not many examples like that in the world. It has shown that not only is this partnership possible, but that you can respond to a crisis and act with speed and can still adhere to best practice in governance. And so that you have a crisis doesn't mean you have to take shortcuts on these things that are meant to help with the practicing good governance. This is something we are very proud of. I am pleased to report that once again, the audit shows that we operated to the highest levels of governance standards and integrity. I'm also pleased at the same time with the impact that we have managed to create in the reporting period, as well as subsequently. Through our projects across the COVID-related pillars, the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, and our newer Solidarity Fund floods response, we have had an incredible impact on organizations, on individuals, and communities. We have strengthened the health system for the long term and supported the national vaccine program. We have provided humanitarian relief and support to farmers, gender-based violence organizations, flood victims, and small businesses and their employees. Finally, we have educated and informed the public and created demand and uptake for the vaccine. At our briefing in March, as you may recall, we announced that the Solidarity Fund would be scaling down its operations in anticipation of a reduced role in the fight against COVID-19. The decision was made by the board based on the changing state of the pandemic and our country's response to it, having evolved from being a pandemic phase to now an endemic one. The fact that all COVID-19 restrictions have subsequently been removed due to the reduced threat has validated this decision. As the fund scales down its operations, we have been particularly cognizant of maintaining our high standards of governance and transparency in all we do, while meeting realistic deadlines. For this reason, we have extended our original timeline of completing our scaling down process from September this year to mid-December, in line with the completion of our interim audit. The scaling down of the fund marks the end of an era. On the one hand, we're all happy to see the back off for the obvious reasons. It's not an era that we would want to have again. But no matter what the world throws at us in the future, the fund is here to remobilize again when it is needed. Hopefully, we are never going to need it, but in case we do, the fund is here to remobilize again when it is needed. I, for one, take comfort in that, as I believe it has laid the groundwork for a rapid, agile response to similar calamities in the future. I would like to thank everyone involved for the hard work that has taken place over the past 2.5 years, and that is still to happen as we edge towards the final scale. With time, we still have to remind South Africa that we had over 400 volunteers behind us, made possible by corporates, contributions of that nature besides the financial. It has been a big team trying to make it work for South Africa. We can never thank those people enough. Wherever they are, they must know that they have fought the battle for South Africa. I will now hand you to the Fund CEO, Thandi Nzimande, to update you on our most recent activities and impact. But before I do that, I still have to say I cannot be more grateful to the board of the Solidarity Fund. They made it possible for us to respond in the speedy way and with agility, and while helping us to make sure that all the levels of authorities are taken care of and the governance processes are being dealt. I can never thank them enough. Thank you very much, Thandi. Let me hand over to you.
In fact, before we get to Thandi, Gloria, I appreciate your time. Thanks for that. I think, two things stand out besides the obvious winding down, right, is perhaps the way the Solidarity Fund has been run in the midst of so many accusations and counter accusations of other organizations, very linked in terms of support, purported support of COVID-19 has been phenomenal. And, your point in terms of the audit report talks about the highest levels of governance and integrity, I think, needs to be, punctuated. So I think that's just a very important point. And the last point on that one, the 400 volunteers you referred to, that means, again, I often speak about champion people. Again, we have champions within our midst at different levels, and they champion causes, in this case through the Solidarity Fund, but in other cases elsewhere, and they need to be recognized, acknowledged. So I'm glad that you've done just that. Okay, with that in mind, then let me bring in then Thandi Nzimande, the CEO of the Solidarity Fund. Yes, she'll reflect on the fund activities to date, but also the all-important integrated annual report. So Thandi, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you, Gloria. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this briefing. Today, we'll be presenting a review of our integrated annual report, as Ashraf has just said, announcing our annual financial statements and providing a review of the activities since our last update in June. This will include an update on our scaling down process, the audited financial statements, and the integrated annual report will both be available to view and download immediately following this briefing on the Solidarity Fund's website, and media releases will be released shortly after the briefing. I will be taking you through the update on our activities, followed by our CFO, Zanele Ngwebe, who will take you through a detailed annual financial statements presentation. But first, as always, an overview of the numbers. In the period between March 2020 and February 2022, almost 4 billion was raised in total. 3.4 billion for the COVID response and 597 million for the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund. As at February 2022, the fund had dispersed 3.2 billion, or 80% of total donations. To date, 3.27 billion has been dispersed in the COVID fund as follows: 2.35 billion in the health pillar response, and the health response pillar rather, 431 million in the humanitarian pillar, 496 million in the behavioral change pillar. Further, the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, established as a response to the challenges resulting from the unrest in July 2021, raised 597 million. That included 100 million, which was redirected within the fund. This amount has been fully dispersed. When the devastating floods hit in KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape occurred in April this year, the Solidarity Fund floods response was set up to respond to the resulting humanitarian crisis. To fund this intervention, The Solidarity Fund initiated fundraising, and 45.3 million was received by the end of August, including 20 million, which was redirected again within the fund. Of this amount, 43.3 million has been allocated and 42.7 million dispersed to date. On the flood response update, the floods that devastated KwaZulu-Natal in April this year really destroyed schools and buildings, damaged infrastructure, and left many without food, shelter, or fresh water. Despite our scaling down process, the fund committed to responding to this catastrophe and assisted NGOs that were already working on the ground to deliver relief and assistance. The 42.7 million dispersed to date has been allocated as follows. Food and essential product support, 13.2 million. Integrated shelter support, 26.3 million. Psychosocial support, 3.2 million. As at the end of August, our impact in the focus areas reflects as follows. Food and essential hygiene products, we have delivered 457,076 meals, 4,764 food parcels, 4,120 hygiene packs, and 2,000 blankets. On the integrated shelter solutions, 30 fully installed boreholes, of which 23 are fully operational and handed over to beneficiaries, with 7 still in final testing phase. We have also provided 334 tents, 1,152 mattresses, 117 toilets, and 36 water tanks. 10 schools and 50 homes have also been repaired. Building materials and cash vouchers for transportation as well as labor were provided to 300 beneficiaries in the Eastern Cape. With respect to psychosocial support, a total of 2,748 beneficiaries have been provided with counseling. Turning to the health pillar, under the health pillar, the project to deliver essential COVID-19 and critical care equipment to public sector hospitals nationally is nearing completion. 418 million, 97% of the total project allocation has been dispersed to date, with some 1,389 pieces of equipment delivered across the country. All equipment contributes to the long-term strengthening of the national system and the national health system. Equipment sourced includes vital signs monitors, hospital beds, X-ray machines, ultrasound sonar machines, and diagnostic sets, to name a few. The Solidarity Fund program to support and augment the national COVID-19 vaccine program was completed on the 30th of June, 2022. Some key highlights of the program include contracted 20 clinical operators who administered a total of 1,392,051 vaccinations at 320 outreach sites, supported the Eastern Cape Department of Health's vaccine program, which resulted in over 500,000 additional jabs being administered in the rural and deep rural Eastern Cape sub-districts. The National Vaccine Coordination, Technical Assistance and Capacitation Program, led by DGMT, which the Solidarity Fund co-funded alongside other donors, contributed to the deployment of over 200 technical assistants to the NDOH, provincial departments of health, and to the districts. Turning to the humanitarian pillar update, all humanitarian pillar projects were fully implemented and closed out as at the end of August. The impact thereof has previously been reported on. The behavioral change pillar was quite active, and there we had the fund's mass reach vaccine demand creation campaign to inform and educate, address myths, fears and concerns, and motivate people out of their hesitancy and inertia. This campaign was scheduled to close at the end of January 2022. However, continued and scaled community level engagement was necessary if South Africa was to reach its vaccination rollout targets as set out by the NDOH. The fund therefore extended the campaign, focusing on two areas: community engagements, followed by support of NDOH vaccine demand creation activities through community mobilization at outreach sites and radio interventions. An on-the-ground communication approach was adopted, focusing on the districts and sub-districts that had the lowest uptake and biggest population. The extension ran from 15 March to 15 May 2022, reaching 5.3 million people via digital channels, community radio, and through the deployment of 1,450 on-the-ground community mobilizers. The NDOH vaccine demand creation activities focused on supporting the extension of the Giredi campaign through radio intervention public service announcements. From the 15th to the 30th of June, the campaign employed 600 community mobilizers, supporting 60 outreach sites. The impact thereof resulted in 327,824 people directly engaged, with 103,787 vaccinations directly attributable to the campaign at the outreach sites. The Solidarity Fund support for the National COVID-19 Call Center, launched in May 2021, has concluded following an extension of the project to the 31st of July this year, from the initial expected end date of March. Additional funding of 18 million was approved to enable the 4-month extension. The call center handled close on 2 million calls from inception to the end of July. Community partner organizations have played an important role in the fund's demand creation campaign. While the partnerships have now come to a close, the impact has been significant. The third and final phase of the Community Partners Program ran from March to June 2022. After additional funding was approved for our 3 partners, the SACC, COVIDCOMS, and CCF. Some highlights of activities and impacts delivered by the community partner organizations include the SACC held over 40 vaccine literacy and mobilization training workshops with more than 3,000 attendees, over 60 vaccine drives leading to the vaccination of 2,500 people. COVIDCOMS conducted more than 500 workshops with over 10,000 attending through the period. The CCF drove social mobilization at district and community level through door-to-door mobilization and community radio partnerships. 600 activations reached 17,000 people with 3,000 vaccinations achieved. Now, turning to the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund update, the work of the HCRF, established after the July 2021 civil unrest that took place in parts of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, has largely been concluded, with the successful disbursements of funds in the final phase. The Solidarity Fund made available 87 million in grant funding to civil society organizations, NPOs, that suffered direct losses or whose beneficiaries had incurred losses. Working closely with the implementation partner, Chikululu, funding was dispersed to 39 organizations. 84 projects were initiated and 83,381 beneficiaries reached. The project will close out at the end of this month, heralding the conclusion of the HCRF's activities. Turning to the scale down update, As Gloria said, the fund is well entrenched in the process of scale down operations, with the final deadline being mid-December. All but approximately 80 million of our donated funds have been allocated and dispersed at this time, and the remaining amount is currently in an approval process for allocation to GBV interventions and food relief programs prior to the financial year end. Funds remaining after the final disbursements will be retained within the fund for reactivation purposes when the need arises. With the scaling down of our operations comes the requirement to slim down the executive and management team. So from January 2023, the day-to-day operations will be managed by an administrator. Further details pertaining to this will be announced at the fund's final briefing in late November. As we inch closer to our final deadline for the scaling down of our operations by December 2022, we stay committed to fulfilling all our obligations responsibly and to the highest standards. We don't, of course, know if and when COVID-19 infections will be on the rise again, but the fund leaves a legacy that will stand us all in good stead for the future. A better capacitated health system, NGOs that are more adequately equipped with skills and resources, and a nation that has reaffirmed its power through solidarity. Thank you. Thank you. Ashraf, can I hand back to you?
Certainly can. Thank you for that, Thandi. And I think so much has been covered from that. I'm pretty certain that members of the media have lots of questions to ask on the back of that. From my side, let me just emphasize what I said earlier on. I said, did I say winding down? No, in fact, it's very much scaling down with the opportunity to scale up if needed. And we hope it's not needed. But I think many understand that the Solidarity Fund has certainly provided a standard to follow if needs be down the line. So, okay, questions will come up, not quite now, later on, but members of the media can certainly do that. Let me, before we then bring in Zanele Mwepi, the CFO of the Solidarity Fund, with the annual financial statement presentation, I also want to just acknowledge Raj Danilal. He's been acknowledged before from PwC, but that role of independent auditor is critically important. So Raj, I know the chairperson has done that already, but let me just amplify that once again. Thank you, and acknowledging your presence as well. Okay, so for the next 15 minutes or so, then we've got Zanele who will present the AFS presentation. Zanele, over to you.
Thank you, Ashraf, and good morning to everyone that's present in this meeting. It gives me great pleasure to present the second set of the Solidarity Fund's annual financial statements. This is for the period of 1 March 2021 to our year end, which was the 28th of February 2022. These AFS were approved by our board, which set on the 25th of August 2022. The fund is a non-profit company, and the financial statements have been prepared in accordance with IFRS and on a going concern basis. At a high level, the primary financial statements of the balance sheet and profit and loss and changes in equity and cash flow reflect funds received as donations of 737 million, operating expenditure of 1.2 billion, administration costs of 6.8 million, and a bank balance at year end of 1.2 billion rands. These numbers are for the 12 months period, which ended at the end of February 2022. Given the public interest nature of the fund, PwC, our external auditors, conducted a very thorough and robust year-end audit in line with the prior year, which was our first year last year. And we are proud to present today the audited annual financial statements of the fund, marked only by a common technical qualification for donation-dependent organizations as ours. In respect of donation received that are dependent on collection by third-party agents. These third-party agents that we received represent about 0.4% of our total donations received. So that is about 279,000 rands related to third-party donations received, compared to last year, which was 0.8% of donations received, amounting to 27 million rands. As documented in the director's responsibilities on page 3 of the AFS, there were no controls that could be implemented to ensure the completeness of these donations received through the third-party agents. In addition, our external auditors on page 17 of the AFS, they provide details on the basis of their opinion. Mr. Raj Dandal, our PwC audit partner, has agreed to join us today as previously announced, and you are welcome to ask him more questions about the audit process or the audit opinion during our Q&A session that we'll have at the end. In terms of donations received, 45% of donations received were received from donations from corporates and trusts. 54% was received from public sector, and 1% was received from individuals. In addition, 88% was domestically sourced, and about 12% was from foreign sources. In terms of operating expenditure, we spent 1.2 billion, as previously mentioned, in the current financial year. And the split of the operating expenditure between the 4 strategic pillars of the fund, as shown on note number 9 of the financials, is as follows. The health response accounted for 45% of our total expenditure, amounting to 556 million. The humanitarian aid pillar accounted for 11%, which amounted to 136 million. The Solidarity Fund campaigns or behavior change campaigns amounted to 23%, which was 285 million. And then finally, the newly created Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, the HCRF, accounted for 20%, which amounted to 247 million. When we look at our biggest pillar, being the health pillar, how the 556 million was spent, about 3% was spent on PPE. COVID research was 7%. Vaccination-related spend was 27%. Critical care equipment and ventilators amounted to 55%. Nursing assistance was 3%. And finally, the Charlotte Maxeke refurbishment project amounted to 3% of the 556 million that was spent on the health response. In terms of the humanitarian pillar, the 136 million was spent mainly on GBV projects, which amounted to 74 million, and food and farming vouchers of about 62 million rands. Those were the 2 main projects on the humanitarian pillar. On the HCRF, the 247 was spent mainly on food parcels, 112 million, and business support grants amounting to 116 million. As stated earlier, the details contained in the key audit matters of the independent auditor's report on page 19 provides very useful context and results of the PwC audit on operational expenditure. This is included in the financial statements as well. And then moving on to our administration costs. So in the current year, the fund incurred administration costs not previously incurred because the seconded staff of the fund was provided to the fund in the form of in-kind support in the prior year. This in-kind support terminated at the end of September 2021, and the fund subsequently incurred the administration costs for the seconded staff and also company secretarial fees, both of these amounting to 6.8 million rands. We can refer for further details on note number 10 of the annual financial statements. Ongoing concern, the financial statements were prepared on a going concern basis. This is detailed on note number 17 of the financial statements. As disclosed, the MOI of the fund states that the fund does not have a specified period of existence, and the fund's termination will be determined by the directors, having regard to whether it is still necessary to maintain the fund's existence so as to enable the ongoing fulfillment of its objectives. This MOI statement introduces an inherent material uncertainty with respect to whether the fund can be regarded as a going concern or not. However, the current year's financial statements have been prepared on a going concern basis, with the board of the opinion that we are a going concern due to the continued involvement of the fund in the National Vaccine Rollout Program, together with the HCRF, the Humanitarian Crisis Relief Fund, that responded to the KZN and the Gauteng unrest, and also the floods response pillar, which has been recently established. This necessitated then the continued existence of the fund, albeit in a scaled down version, as mentioned by the CEO. In terms of governance, risk and control, we'd like to draw your attention to our Audit and Risk Committee report, Corporate Governance report, and Directors' reports included in the fund section of the annual financial statements. These reports highlight the focus of the fund's management, the ARC, the Audit and Risk Committee, and the board on transparency, sound financial management, and good corporate governance in order to ensure that the fund has robust systems of internal, financial, and accounting control and risk management practices. And then in closing, I would like to thank our ARC chair, Ms. Trifosa Ramano, and the ARC members and co-opted members for their guidance and support throughout the year. And I would also like to thank the finance team who were invaluable in the production of this comprehensive annual financial statements that we are presenting today. Thank you so much. I hand over to Ashraf.
Zanele, thank you for that. Again, very detailed, and I think a lot of it is pretty clear. And I will not comment on it. I think it's up to members of the media to comment on it and interpret that the way they see it. So there's a chance for you to ask questions in this chat. And if you do so, you can actually put down your questions right away. Franco will look at it, and then we'll put that through to relevant members of the board and the executive of the Solidarity Fund. So do that right away. But before that, maybe just for a few more minutes before we get to the Q&A, I'll bring in once again the chairperson of the Solidarity Fund, Gloria Sorovia, who will give us a recap, and then maybe just looking ahead to that final briefing and then what happens next. So Gloria.
Thank you very much, Ashraf, again. As our update and financials have shown, the Solidarity Fund, when it comes to impact, we believe has boxed above its weight. From the start, we knew we would have limited funds, and so we worked very hard to ensure that every rand, every euro, every dollar that was donated was used effectively and can be accounted for. We had the need to be trusted by the public. The financials talk to the head, the maths, and shows that the money was used effectively and responsibly. But our report backs and our updates talk to the heart, the impact we have made on individuals and communities. I am proud of both, and I thank you really for giving us your time so we could share this with you. I look forward to chatting to you again at our next briefing in late November, where we provide a comprehensive update on the fund scale down and information regarding the fund administrator and the reconstituted board going forward into 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Gloria. I just want to double check, in fact, whether we do have any questions or not. It looks like if there is, we'll do that right away. If not, then it's really time for me to say goodbye. So maybe just pause for a moment, but just to remind you again, it does suggest that members of the media clearly have got all the answers they need, and that's fantastic, right? But it also maybe suggests a sense of normalizing of the state of where we are in terms of the work of the Solidarity Fund. And you've heard that point about scaling down and then maybe scaling up if needed. So I just want to double check. In fact, I think we have no questions. So let me then just say this much then, that we know that again, different media houses have connected with us separately to set up one-on-one interviews, to write reports and get further clarity. So please do that. If you haven't yet done so, please do that. And Frank will be our contact person, and they will certainly gladly, or he will certainly gladly accommodate you. Right? So beyond that, I think I'm going to simply leave it at that, accepting saying once again, another privilege being part of this Solidarity Fund media briefing. Also, that's this entire briefing. Is there a question? No?
Yes,
okay.
Is.
In fact, there is one, yeah. Okay, Franco, perhaps if you can just get that to me so we can read that out, yeah?
Yeah, it's on.
In fact, let me just see if we got it out in the chat line, yeah? Okay, I don't see the question here directly, but perhaps if you can just connect it to me, I'll certainly do that. While we're setting all of that up, just let me remind you, okay, I think we've got the question now. Let me just see that, okay. And the question is, I'd like to ask about the going concern terminology. Can it be explained? Is this a financial term? So you're saying as a going concern, if I understand that part. Well, okay, I'll leave it to the financial guys to respond to that. Who wants to pick it up? So Nelly, perhaps yourself, or maybe Raj.
Thank you, Ashraf. As Raj has responded, that it is a technical term, but it means that the entity is going to continue to operate for at least another 12 months from the date that we sign our financial statements. So the Solidarity Fund is going to continue to operate, but in a scaled down version of the fund until it can be scaled up again in future as and when it's needed. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully that's pretty clear, right? Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. So besides what I've just reiterated, people can connect with Franco directly if needs be. Let me also remind you that there are, first of all, this has been carried live besides the session, also on YouTube. So you can go to the Solidarity Fund YouTube account channel, that is, to be able to see the whole thing again if needed. But also there are tweets, live in the moment tweets, which presents invaluable quotes that you can pick up right through, besides those that receive or will receive the actual information, direct quotes from the various presentations. So those short soundbite type quotes are available immediately on the Solidarity Fund Twitter account. You can see that right away. I've certainly shared it as well too. Okay, so with that in mind, I think it's a planned end at 12 o'clock, but it means we've got 15 minutes to chill and have coffee and tea and whatever else it is we do, and how we do that virtually, well, I'll leave it to all of you to decide. But from my side then, Ashraf Garda, great to be a part of it. And let me wish each and every one of you a warm good afternoon, goodbye for the rest of the day. I get it that there'll be that briefing coming up in November, so just about a month and a bit until we have a further update on and then ahead to the scaling down of the Solidarity Fund. Okay, goodbye, good afternoon, and I'll give you a thumbs up.
Thank you very much, Ashraf.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for making yourself available, Raj.
You're welcome, Tandy. For once, I didn't have too much to